Thank you. People around the world remember Pope Francis as a humble man that did not forget the less fortunate.
Fox News correspondent Lauren Green takes a look back at now millions are mourning his loss and honoring his life and the legacy that he now leaves behind.
When the white smoke filled the air over the Vatican in March of 2013, it signaled Pope Francis had been elected to lead the Catholic Church. And almost from that moment, he signaled changes were coming. The first pontiff from Latin America, the first Jesuit, the first to call himself Francis, would be just a few of the new beginnings. Born Jorge Bergoglio in Buenos Aires on December 17, 1936, to Italian immigrant parents, he was the oldest of 5. The future Pope's father, Mario, worked for the railway, and his mother, Regina Savori, stayed at home. As a student, he had a variety of jobs, including working as a bouncer in a bar. In 1958, Bergoglio entered the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. He graduated with a degree in philosophy from the College of San Jose and San Miguel, and later taught literature and psychology. He was ordained a priest in 1969. In 1992, Pope John Paul II appointed him a bishop. 6 years later, he became Archbishop of Buenos Aires, a culturally diverse and economically challenged community. 3 years later, he was elevated to Cardinal, where he was known for taking public transportation instead of a private car. When Pope John Paul II died in 2005, he was among the cardinals who elected the German Joseph Ratzinger, who became Benedict XVI. 8 years later, the unthinkable. Benedict became the first pope in nearly 600 years to resign, sending shockwaves throughout not just Catholicism, but all around the world. For Benedict's successor, the cardinals chose the 76-year-old Bergoglio. It was a surprise to most, but not his fellow cardinals.
We spoke about him often because he was widely known and respected.
Always setting the example of his own philosophy that servants of the church should be humble and lead simpler lives. He paid his own bill at the hotel where he stayed during the conclave and turned down the palatial papal quarters in favor of a more modest residence at the Vatican. He also began speaking frankly about modern issues, famously saying, "Who am I to judge?" when asked about the sexual orientation of priests. During Holy Week ceremonies, he shocked traditionalists by washing the feet of women and non-Catholics. For his first international trip, the Holy Father traveled to his native continent, South America, visiting Brazil, the world's most Catholic country, for World Youth Day. Celebrating Mass before 3 million people on Rio de Janeiro's famed Copacabana beach. Passionate about the environment, his signature encyclical Laudato Si outlined how global warming hurts the less fortunate around the world. He took a pilgrimage to North America, first stopping in Cuba, saying Mass to thousands.
At the home of the brave.
Then on to the United States, addressing a joint session of Congress and visiting with President Barack Obama at the White House. In New York, he spoke before the United Nations General Assembly and held Mass at Madison Square Garden.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
In the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, he attended the World Meeting of the Families Festival and met privately with victims of sex abuse. Francis also defended Islam while condemning the terror group ISIS. In the wake of the deadly terror attacks on Christmas in Egypt, Francis traveled to Cairo, extending the hand of fellowship to Muslims. Francis also became the first pope to visit Iraq on March 5, 2021. On his trip, he met with Iraq's top Ayatollah and urged peace. At the age of 84, his health started to decline, first undergoing surgery to remove part of his colon for what the Vatican described as a planned procedure, and later suffering from a small fracture in his knee. During a trip to Canada, the Pope required the help of a wheelchair and walker, telling reporters he could no longer travel like he used to and may possibly retire one day. In late 2022, his predecessor, Pope Benedict, died, marking the end of an unprecedented 9-year-long arrangement of 2 popes living side by side in the Vatican gardens. Pope Francis presided over Benedict's funeral and said losing Benedict felt like he had lost a dad. Francis continued to battle opposition as he worked to make the Catholic Church more inclusive. He said he welcomed the criticism because it meant there was freedom to speak.
Well, his priestly motto had always been that a Latin phrase that recognizes God's mercy and also sovereignty, a sentiment that guided his ministry and will also now be his legacy.
Now, the Pope took part in several events during Holy Week, giving some optimism that he was recovering from his illness. Boston 25 News reporter Ryan Breslin live at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross in Boston this morning. And Ryan, the Vice President of the United States, was one of the last people to see the Pope.
Good morning to you, Gene. Yeah, that's right. The Pope scaled back his appearances over Holy Week. Crowds in the Vatican, they heard from him one last time on Easter Sunday as he gave the blessing from the St. Peter's Basilica balcony. That's something only the Pope can do. And that balcony is where people first met Pope Francis when he was elected in 2013.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, buona Pasqua.
CNN reports Pope Francis had been unable to speak for a long time following his pneumonia diagnosis, which he had still been trying to recover from. They say on Thursday he met with inmates at a prison and on Saturday night greeted people at the Basilica. Before taking the balcony Sunday, he also met with Vice President J.D. Vance. Vance posting on X, quote, "I just learned of the passing of Pope Francis. My heart goes out to the millions of Christians all over the world who loved him. I was happy to see him yesterday, though he was obviously very ill. May God rest his soul." The vice president also referenced a homily that Pope Francis gave in the early days of COVID-19, Vance calling it quite beautiful. We're still waiting this morning to hear from the Archdiocese of Boston. For now, live in Boston, Ryan Breslin for your local station, Boston 25 News.
All right, Ryan, thank you. Well, we will continue to follow this breaking news as Catholics around the world mourn the passing of Pope Francis. You'll find the very latest on air, online, and also on our Boston 25 News app.